What's up, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the QB Factory Reboot brought to you by SB Nation and Bleeding Green Nation. We are recording on Tuesday, March 29th, to be exact. And on today's episode, we're going to touch on the quarterbacks that have been impacted the most by offseason moves. We're also going to talk about the teams that maybe suddenly have become contenders once they got a new quarterback this offseason. And we're going to continue shedding light on the pro days that have taken place since we last recorded last Tuesday. But I'm your host, Raichele Privette, and I am joined one and only by my host, the one and only Mark Schofield. You guys know him and love him. But before we get started, don't forget to rate, leave a written review, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and follow us on Instagram. Mark, you're over here shivering. What's going on?
Are you sure it's March 29th?
That's
It
what the
feels like
calendar
January 29th.
It does.
We were talking before we hit the record button. Like, I was at the bus stop with the kids this morning, and they're like all bundled, and they got the hats on, and the earmuffs, and the scarves, and you're freezing outside. I was coaching baseball, and like the kids don't want to hit because the bat vibrates. It's not fun.
No.
This is not good. But despite it being frigid out, I am in a joyous mood today because the Top Gun Maverick trailer, the second one, just dropped.
I saw you quote tweet that.
I am overjoyed. There's a reference to Iceman in a new capacity, which is just tremendous. So, of course, I have to drop a movie quote. I feel the need for speed. And I do think we're going to talk a little bit about speed as we get through this show here. But I am extremely excited. May 27th, Top Gun Maverick. Tom Cruise looks great, I will also say. I mean, he looks really good. Good to see for him. John Hamm's in it, which is just nice little role for him. So I'm extremely excited. I'm a very excited mood right now. We get Top Gun Maverick. I'm overjoyed by that. But I am, as you said, freezing right now. I can't feel my toes just from going outside to take out the trash. So there is that to deal with.
You need like a heated blanket or something.
I know. I want to get one of those. Do you have like one of those weighted blankets?
I don't.
I've always like toyed with them, but then I'm just so afraid that like my eyes will pop open in the morning. I'll be like, I'm not getting out from under this. Like I can't.
Yeah.
Like, there's that fear in the back of my mind that I'll just be, in bed all day, which as can't do that anymore.
No, can't do that. We
but
got things to do.
Yeah, got things to do. We got shows to do. So I'm gonna try to thaw myself up while I listen to your movie quote or your songwriter.
First, I love the fact that right before we got on the episode, I saw you quote tweet that Top Gun is doing their part 2, their second movie or whatever, and I was going to bring that up. So I'm happy that you brought that up. And if our listeners have been riding with us since the season, they'll remember that was one of your homework assignments that you gave me.
Yeah.
Remember, before we started recording QB Factory, I had never seen Top Gun. Yeah. So now I'm excited because I'll be able to watch the second one and know what happened.
Yeah. And there's a lot of callbacks to the first one, so it's gonna be good for everybody.
Yeah, so I am excited for that. I chose song lyrics, and then I'm just gonna go right in and jump into what we're talking about because the song lyrics relate to my first point. I chose lyrics from "Can't Tell Me Nothing" by Kanye West, and he says, "To whom much is given, much is tested." I'm sure everybody else has heard also the one that goes, "To whom much is given, much is required." I am applying this to Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins. If you guys have been keeping up with what's going on, they have made a ton of off-season moves, and a lot of them definitely going to impact Tua, I think, in a positive way, but I also feel like because they are, doing what they have to do in order to surround him with these weapons, it's going to require him to step up. It's a little bit of pressure for him. So it's like they're giving you all of this, and now how are you going to respond with it? Like just going over some of their offensive additions. Of course, Tyreek Hill, which was one of the biggest ones, wide receiver coming from the Chiefs. So that's going to be crazy, partnering him up with Jalen Waddle. But they also brought on Teron Armstead. They brought on Trent Sherfield, Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds. The list goes on and on and on. So many talented players now with the Miami Dolphins. So all of a sudden they just got loaded, and now like this is, I guess, can be a team to be worried about and a little bit scared for.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I scratched together my like 5 quarterbacks that were helped the most by offseason moves. And Tua is the guy that could help the most, right? You look at obviously Tyreek Hill. There's been a lot of discussion already about using him in sort of the Deebo Samuel role. You know, obviously their new head coach, Mike McDaniel, was Deebo's offensive coordinator last year. Like, he has a good idea of how to get a player with Tyreek or Deebo's skill set involved. And, you know, I looked at in a piece I did for USA Today, like the ways that the Dolphin, what he brings to the table. It's certainly the explosive playmaking skills downfield. Yes, we all know that. The ability after the catch, but it's also what he does with the football in his hands, number one. And obviously what he did on a lot of their RPO concepts, because that's the foundation of Miami's offense, or at least it was last year, right? They were one of the heavier RPO teams in the league. Now you bring in a guy in Tyreek that, you know, they did some RPO stuff with him. And you also look at an Armstead, at an Edmonds, like the pieces that they've put around to have put him in a position to succeed. It put him in a position where, as Mike McDaniel said when he was hired and he got on the phone with Tua the first time on that video that the Dolphins recorded, McDaniel's job is to get the greatness out of Tua, and that's what he needs to do. Now, but you sort of teed it up there. Tua has to do it.
Yes.
Because after the first hour of analysis, when the trade went down, it was like, oh, this is a great move by Miami. Everybody sort of caught their breath, and they were like, well, now Tua has to do it. Right. Then the phrase that came along next was, there's no more excuses for Tua. Right.
Facts.
There's no more excuses for Tua, because if he can't succeed with what they've put in place around him and what we anticipate to be a very quarterback friendly system, he's out of excuses.
And you
know, that also leads us to the scenario where, as we've seen before, new head coach comes in, tries it with the quarterback, doesn't quite work. All right, I'm moving on. Like we're gonna go. Like, look at Cleveland.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a whole other scenario we didn't have to get into. But
right,
Kevin Stefanski comes in. He's given Baker Mayfield. He's like, you know what? We're going in a different direction, and they went in a different direction.
Yeah, I want to stay on Tua for a little bit longer, because another topic that has been tied to this whole conversation is the fact that, you know, when you think about Tyreek Hill, for example, I think personally, like, Tyreek Hill is rare. I think he's hard to replace. And you think about, you're going to automatically compare it to Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill's chemistry. You know that they were there, you know, like he was that guy. So the fact that, you know, Hill is now with the Dolphins, and what the highest paid wide receiver in the league, you know that Tyreek Hill is used to getting targets consistently. So he's going to want more and more. So like you said, that falls on Tua, because he's going to be required to get the ball to Tyreek Hill. And if he can't do that, Tyreek Hill is going to have a problem with that, because, you know, it's Tyreek Hill. That's what he's used to. And then I also think that he's going to be compared to some of the other younger quarterbacks in the league, because he's going into his third season. So now it's like, all right, we can't give you but so much time. So when you think about the Josh Allens, the, you know, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, this is a big year for Tua. And I think everybody's going to definitely have their eye out for the Dolphins and, you know, what they're going to be able to do. Are they going to be able to make it to the playoffs this year? So yeah, I'm excited.
I mean, and you mentioned that third year. I mean, that's a brilliant point, because that's the Bill Walsh line, right? If a quarterback doesn't figure it out by the third year, like, there's nothing you can do. Like, you know, it's over.
Yeah.
And for Tua now in that third year, because you mentioned Josh Allen, that's when he had the lead. It was a third year. And a lot of other fans of teams like the Giants are like, oh, can we get Daniel Jones to make that third year leap? No, like it didn't. It didn't come together. And so, you know, Tua's got a huge task ahead of him, like a massive task. And you also touched on that chemistry. Like, you watch Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and those scramble drill moments when Mahomes is buying time, they're on the same page. Like, there were some plays where Hill's making a cut. He's starting to cut to one side. He sees that flash of Mahomes working away, and it's boom on a dime, working back across the field to stay parallel to him and to stay in his field of vision. It's going to take time for Tua and Tyreek to get on that same page. Now, I'm not saying it won't happen, but what if it doesn't happen until like Thanksgiving? You know, we seem to use those like Halloween, Thanksgiving, and like Christmas like timeline indicators on this show. If it happens by Halloween, like, that could be okay. If it happens by Thanksgiving, then you're in a little bit of a problem there.
I can already see it now. The headlines. If it doesn't click instantly, that is going to be the talk of the town. Like, everywhere. Everybody's going to be talking about Tua and how he's not stepping up. So I'm just going to wish him the best. But do you have, what's your next, who was your next?
My second quarterback that's going to help the most is Derek Carr.
Yay! Okay.
Yeah, see, we're on the same page. Here we go.
We're on the same page.
But I mean, we just talked about chemistry, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Go back and pull up some old Fresno State film when Derek Carr and Davante Adams were teammates, and you see that chemistry. I mean, and we just talked about, how long will it take for Tua and Tyreek to get on the same page? With Derek and Davante, it's like day one. Like it's going back to school in a sense. And so, yeah, exactly. And so, obviously the Raiders have a lot of needs at the receiver position. They filled it in a huge way. Davante Adams, arguably the best receiver in the game, if not top 5, top 3. A lot of people will say he's top 2 and he's not 2. I'm kind of there with those people. And so you add that, you add in that chemistry. Yes, it's like Davante Adams. It's one player. It's not the Tyreek, the Teron, the Chase Edmonds, and all that stuff. But it's a really, really good reunion, I think.
Yeah. And I think even the fact that look at the players that they already had, same thing with the Dolphins too. They had, Jalen Waddle, who's, nice as well. And like we'd already talked about the running backs, but when you're looking at the Raiders as well.
And then Mike Gesicki too. Yeah. I mean.
Yes. Tight end. They have, the Raiders have Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow. So you're adding on another weapon, an elite weapon, an explosive weapon.
Yep. You start thinking about that sort of 11 personnel package, right? Where you get the 3 receivers, the 1 tight end, Darren Waller. You've got Bryan Adams at 1 receiver, Hunter Renfrow in the slot. Now you put Davante Adams on the outside. Like imagine a trips formation where you've got Waller at 3, Renfrow at 2, and Adams outside at the 1. What are you going to do as a defensive coordinator? Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to drop 8 into coverage. You're going to shift 5 guys over to that side of the field. Now, Bryan Edwards, and, you say what you want about Bryan Edwards, he's going to see a ton of one-on-one situations. And, it's a scenario where everybody gets better because of what you've added and what you can now do schematically. And so, Derek Carr is a very sort of much maligned, polarizing type of player, right? If like I do, you dip your toes into Raiders Twitter and it could be the middle of April and they're screaming about Derek Carr being good or bad or whatever.
Yeah.
He's also in a position now where it's like, all right, now you've got Davante Adams, you've got your boy back. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to put up the kind of numbers we're hoping to see? And if he does, that still might only be good enough to finish third in the AFC West because you've got Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert to deal with. Like that AFC West ratio. Like
it's scary. It is so freaking scary.
I mean, we are going to see a primetime game from that division every single week.
I'm here for it.
It's probably making sense, right?
It is.
Like, are you going to put on a bunch of NFC East games? I mean,
no, they can't.
Yeah, so,
I mean, it's definitely something to be, excited for. And another piece of the puzzle with the Raiders, for example, is their head coach situation. We saw how successful they were last year, despite all of the adversity that they went through. Have under an interim head coach, like their season was wild. And the fact that they were able to overcome those obstacles put in front of them and still like be pretty successful. I'm a little nervous, for them this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing about Josh McDaniels coming in is twofold. One, I think McDaniels has learned from the mistakes of his past. Like he had a very bad tenure during his time with Denver. Like, the legendary story, which is he comes in, Jay Cutler's the quarterback. And after the first meeting where like McDaniels basically ripped the guy, Cutler walks out of the meeting, calls his agent. It's like, you got to get me out of here. Like you got to get me traded. Like they end up drafting Tim Tebow, who is not a quarterback anymore. Like, there you go. Then he takes the Colts job and steps back and walks away from them. Like he's had a rocky start. This is, we're on third strike situation with Josh McDaniels. So he knows he has to put this together.
Yeah.
But the other thing to remember is Josh McDaniels, say what you want about him from a head coaching standpoint, very smart offensive mind, number one. Number two, during his time in New England, showed a penchant for adapting his offense to what the team has in place, to the players in the building. When it was at the end of Tom Brady's time in New England, when it looked like, they couldn't throw the ball effectively, they went from being this spread you out, throw the ball all over the place team to a like I formation high school offense at times. because he's able to adapt his schemes. And he also, when they do spread you out, it's quick passing, it's getting the ball to guys in space, letting them work after the catch. That fits Derek Carr. That's where he's most comfortable. That fits Renfro, and that certainly fits Adams. And so you can see where, like, all right, McDaniels has certainly had his struggles.
Yeah.
But this might be an ideal situation for him, and he's learned from the mistakes of the past. That's my, like, elevator pitch to Raiders fans. Like, hey, I know the AFC West is loaded, but it could work out.
Yeah. What are some other teams that you think, have been? I definitely said I feel like you have to say Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Like they're definitely going to be impacted positively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think 3 other quarterbacks that got some help. Joe Burrow. Interesting. Coming off a Super Bowl appearance, but what was everybody saying that they needed to do? They needed to fix the offensive line. Every single mock draft prior to free agency had, okay, who's the best offensive lineman available at 31? Doesn't matter if they fit. Doesn't matter what. Like, that's the pick at 31 for the Bengals. What did they do? Alex Kappa at guard, Ted Karras at center, and Leo Collins at offensive tackle. Like, they added 3 guys already. And that offensive line, it was an issue for them, right? Like, Joe Burrow gets sacked, 9 times against Tennessee in just one game? Like, you can't do that again. So now you're suddenly looking at, okay, you got Jonah Williams, you got Jackson Carman, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Leo Collins. Like, that's a better looking offensive line than what they had in the Super Bowl. They could still certainly add at 31 or later in the draft, but now they don't have to force a pick at 31. So I think Burrow got some help. Zach Wilson got a little bit of help.
That's good.
They had the tight end CJ Uzama, who I think is a perfect scheme fit. They had Lincoln Tomlinson as well. And the plan reportedly, because we got the NFL owners meetings going on right now, is he going to kick Elijah Vera Tucker to right guard? Tomlinson going to slide in at left guard. Becton, their left tackle, who they drafted in the first round of the 2020 draft, he might slide to right tackle or not. They're still sort of figuring that out, which I think puts perhaps tackle in play at some point in this draft, but maybe not early because they have picks at 4 and 10. So Wilson got some help. And then there's Trevor Lawrence. And I know when Jacksonville spent the money they did and made the moves they did, a lot of people were like, this is dumb. This is stupid. This is insane. I'm kind of in the minority there.
Okay.
I kind of like what they've done.
Right.
Like Christian Kirk. I know for until Devontae Adams and until Tyreek, like there was a window where it was like, wait, is he one of the highest paid receivers in the game? And it's like, Christian Kirk? Really? Obviously, then we found out the real deal. And, a good reminder, a little quick aside. During free agency, when the contracts drop and the big names from the 4-letter networks say, oh, so-and-so just signed a 5-year, $650 million deal, that's the copy-paste from the agent. That's who's going to report it to them first. Catch your breath, wait to see, because with Christian Kirk and some other deals, it's like initially it's like the sticker shock hits you. You're like, this is a $90 million deal. But then you realize it's like really a 2-year deal for $40 million, and then a lot of outs and options and things like that. So that being said, they still spend a lot of money on Christian Kirk, but I think he's a fit for what they need. They need vertical explosive playmakers, and he does it out of the slot. They need a vertical element to their passing game, because I think that's what fits Trevor Lawrence best. And I think that's where Doug Peterson was trying to get the Eagles near the end of his time in Philadelphia, was a vertical-based passing offense. You look at some of the receivers they added, Quez Watkins, Hightower, they added vertical speed for Carson Wentz and never quite got there. There's an overlap in skill set between Wentz and Lawrence, and I think that's what they're trying to build. So I kind of like what they did. I mean, Zay Jones, maybe a little bit of a reach. People were like, you bring, Cam Robinson back. He's not that good, but I don't know. And then you add Brandon Sheriff, who's a very good guard. I think they've made some moves that are going to be helpful. I don't think it's as wildly bad as people are making out to be, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, that's fine. But sitting here right now, I think they did some good things around it.
I'm happy that you brought that up, because I hadn't even put that on my list, but that was a good. I like their offseason moves, starting with Doug Peterson,
Yeah, I mean, and I think when you remember that the goal, when you have that young quarterback on that cost control deal, is to be aggressive around them, build around them, and get them to where they need to be. So at the end of that cost control deal, and you have to pay them that second contract, that long-term extension, you feel comfortable doing so. And so you try to do the things that will put them in the best position to be successful. It's very similar to how we kick this off with Tua, right? you have to get to where he is or where he needs to be. If you can't, well, you're not going to pay him that long-term deal. You're going to reset the quarterback clock. I think Jacksonville is in a similar situation because you don't want to do. The Rams were able to get away from it because they swung the Stafford trade, but they paid Goff the big extension and realized he's not getting us to where we need to be. And so now you're seeing teams get even quicker with that decision. Chicago with Trubisky, for example, they're like, why pay him the second deal? Let's just move on. And I think we're going to see something similar play out. Cleveland obviously did it. They're not paying Baker a second deal. Watch the Giants in the next couple of days. They're going to make a decision about Daniel Jones's fifth-year option coming up. They might decide, look, we're not going to do it. We'll do what the Bears did. We'll not give him the fifth-year option. If somehow Daniel Jones puts it all together, then you'll franchise tag him and you'll pay the price then. But teams are going to be patient with those fifth-year options because if you don't know if he's the guy, don't pick up that option and don't give him that second contract.
I like that. I like that a lot. But we're going to take a really, really quick break. And when we come back, we are going to touch on the pro days that have happened since we last recorded last week. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And we're back. So we touched on the quarterbacks currently in the league and those different offseason moves, but let's continue to unload and I guess run down the list of the pro days that have taken place since we last talked. So we know that Kenny Pickett had already taken place when we talked last week when Carmen was our guest. Yep. And on Tuesday when we were talking, Malik Willis was having his pro day. So of course we already know that was, the talk of the town. But I know you talk about Desmond Ridder and Matt Corral a lot. So based off of their performances, what did you see from them? What did you hear people saying about their pro days?
I think let's start with Matt Corral first. A lot of people were there in attendance for that one because it was really the first time he's had a chance to work out. He had the high ankle sprain from the Sugar Bowl. Obviously didn't do anything at the combine, but he looked pretty good. Like he moved well, he threw well. I think there's, I don't want to say absolute genuine excitement about him in the first round or at least early, but I think it's much more likely sitting here right now that if there's a fourth quarterback in the first round, it would be him, and it might, be on the later side. A lot of people have said if Detroit doesn't do it at 2, maybe they do it at 32. And, you could see two different mindsets to that sort of decision, right? Okay. Like if you're going to draft a quarterback at 32, why wait? Why roll the dice? If you're comfortable off drafting him at 32, just draft him at 2. Like, don't need the chance. And there's another mindset that's like, look, like we were just talking about the fifth-year option. Like if you have the opportunity to draft a quarterback at the end of the first round, you'll still do it. Maybe he's only QB3 on your board, but it's like, you have that fifth-year option. You can take some time with him. And from Detroit's perspective, you're going to have a pick coming up in the next few selections anyway. So take safety. It's a position they have to address. Maybe they draft Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau or somebody else at 2. They draft Matt Corral at 32. They could still draft a safety then at 34. That would be a pretty good, pathway for them. But I think Corral sort of helped himself because he put to rest at least some of the concerns because we hadn't seen him do anything for a while. Desmond Ridder, I performed well. Everybody's had that ability now to make that pro day throw where you like roll out to your left and throw the backside post and it's a 75-yard throw and everybody loses their mind. But that brings us back to Willis. Like Willis remains the guy right now that has generated the most buzz, started with the Senior Bowl and all the way through the draft process right now to this point at least. And there's a brilliant website. It's called Mock Draft Database, right? And what this website does, NFLmockdraftdatabase.com, it tracks every mock draft. And mock drafts are inexact sciences, but they're informative in the way that you can see players trending up and down. Okay. Because, obviously they track every single mock draft. So there are people like Daniel Jeremiah's who are in there, people like Mel Kiper's, idiots like mine. But as players start to move, you can see their trends and you can even compare players. And so I wrote a piece last week for Big Blue View talking about whether the Giants should draft Malik Willis at 5 or at 7. And I compared Kenny Pickett's draft status in these mock drafts to Malik Willis. and you can see right out of the combine it flips. Like going into the combine and even through the Senior Bowl, Pickett's the guy coming off the board early, Willis later. But then it just sort of flips. And it was Willis' throw-in session at the combine and everything else that happened. You could see his stock sort of take off.
Okay.
And I think it sort of stayed there as a result. And so, yes, Ritter performed well. Matt Corral performed well. Kenny Pickett performed well. Like even Sam Howell, had some good throws at his pro day. Willis seems to have cemented himself now as the guy that's probably coming off the board first. And it gets us back to what we've talked about on the show for a while now, which is people are just going to look at the arm. They're going to look at the athleticism. They're going to look at the promise. They're going to look at the upside and say, if we're placing that bet in the first round, it's on him.
Yeah. And rightfully so. I mean, I think he looks really good,
Yeah. I mean, in this draft, like if this were last year, like let's say different universe, parallel universe, and Malik Willis is in last year's class, he's probably QB4. Like he's in that sort of range. You're probably looking at Lawrence and Wilson and in my mind Fields ahead of him. He'd be in that Lance area for me. But in this year's class, it's a different class. And there's also that sort of seismic moment. I think there are two sort of seismic moments in the NFL this past year that have shifted people's thinking. One was what the Rams did, right? Trade away draft picks, forget the picks. Who cares? The draft is an inexact science. You don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Trade draft picks for established players. Like
you're seeing that this offseason. That's literally what you're seeing. We were talking about on Monday Football Monday, and I think either RJ or Pete had brought it up. Like Les Snead. Yeah. Literally was like the blueprint. And now you're seeing this offseason that's what everybody is doing, especially with the quarterbacks that are younger. It's like, okay, well, we're going to surround him with, experienced players. And if he can perform well with them, because they know what they're doing, they're elite, they're at that level. Okay, then that shows us a little bit of something. So that's I like that you brought that up.
It's like what we talked about with the Dolphins. You're going to surround them with established talent. If it worked, great. If it doesn't, well, we're going to have to draft another quarterback, and maybe I get fired, but I took the swing this way. So I think the Rams winning the Super Bowl the way they did it was one sort of seismic event. The other was that Bills-Chiefs playoff game.
Okay.
When people saw Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes play the way they did, they realized, look, you've got to get freak aliens at the quarterback position. Like when you have the ability to get downfield and score in 13 seconds because of what your quarterback can do at that position, you need guys that can do that. And so I think teams watched that and they realized, all right, look, there are guys in this draft class like Kenny Pickett that are they're athletic, they can move around a little bit, but is Pickett going to do what Allen did? Is Pickett going to do what Mahomes did? Maybe not. Maybe Malik Willis won't, but he's got the best chance of getting there.
Yeah.
And so teams are going to look at that and say, if we need quarterbacks that can compete with the likes of Mahomes and Herbert and these freak aliens throwing footballs the way they do, we're going to take that bet on upside. And so I think you look at those two as two sort of seismic events, and you see teams trading for veteran quarterbacks or trading for veteran talent around younger quarterbacks. And you might now see in the draft Malik Willis's rise be a result of we have to get guys at the position that can compete with guys like Mahomes and Allen and all these guys that play the position at such a high level.
You know what would be funny to me? Just because of the talk and pretty much the theme around this entire QB class is if we fast forward 5 years, three years, we could say 3 years, and some of these underrated QBs just kind of skyrocket off.
Well, that's the beauty of the curse in a way of this whole evaluation process and draft process is it is an inexact science. You in many ways don't know what you're getting, particularly at the quarterback position where so much is dependent on scheme and talent and all that other stuff. But as we try to remind people, we're also talking about 22, 23, 24-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a 22, 23, 24. And I certainly wasn't, I didn't have my head on straight. I didn't have things figured out. And for a lot of these guys, you've been the big fish in a big pond for a long time. And now suddenly you're on your own.
Yep.
You're doing things like paying car insurance for the first time, buying a house, buying a condo, you're dealing with other real life stuff. And for rookies, you're doing all this pre-draft stuff and pre-draft prep, and you're taking your top 30 meetings and you're learning 15 different playbooks so you can whiteboard stuff with, the Eagles on one day and with the Steelers on another day. You're getting wined and dined by Mike Tomlin.
Right.
Mike Tomlin is riding the rookie dinner circuit. He's taking all these guys out.
He is.
Good for him.
Yeah.
But then suddenly you're thrust into a new city. You've wound down the world's longest and strangest and most curious and complex job interview process in all recorded history. And now you have to learn an offense and run an offense, and you have to step into a huddle with guys that are like 10 and 15 years older than you and tell them what to do.
Take command. Yeah.
It's a lot. And so the draft is an exact science. And so you're exactly right. Like, we could look at this 5 years from now, and while we're all talking about Malik Willis, suddenly Kenny Pickett's the guy, or Desmond Ritter's the guy, or Matt Corral's the guy, or Carson Strong. Like, if you would have told me this time last year that, hey, there's going to be a large portion of the season where Davis Mills looks like the best of the rookie quarterbacks, not Trevor Lawrence, not Zach Wilson, not Justin Fields, I would have said that there's absolutely no way. But these things happen. And so that also might get us back to that trading for established talent. Like, you don't know what you're getting. And so if you're a team, like if we're here this time next year and Tua doesn't take that step, I think it's far more likely that with the extra picks they picked up along the way, the Dolphins make a swing for an established veteran quarterback rather than resetting the quarterback clock again. And so, those two seismic events, I think, though, the Rams win and that Bills-Chiefs game are going to shape a lot of the decisions that are made, not just this offseason, but maybe the next one or two.
Yeah. And I was like, at least you can see what majority of these QB prospects that we know that they're not coming in and they're going to be starting immediately with most of these teams. So they'll get that year to observe and learn the good and the bad from some of the veteran quarterbacks. And definitely
and for many of these, like, you look at Mahomes, and Mahomes has said this before, like the most beneficial thing for him wasn't just the fact that he sat out that first year. He started the season finale. Alex Smith was mentorship. Like, Smith would pick him up in the morning, bring him to the facility. They'd watch film together. He basically taught him like what it's like to be an NFL quarterback. Yeah. Because, a lot of other positions like offensive line, like they're more like, I've said this before, like snap to whistle. It's like what you do. But for quarterback, it starts Monday morning when you walk into the facility, whether it's at 5:45 a.m. or 3:45 a.m. Like, how you get yourself ready during the week then pays off. And it does obviously for the other positions, but for quarterback, doubly so. And so Smith's mentorship and guiding Mahomes through that rookie season then paid off in a huge way that second year. And so hypothetically, if Pittsburgh drafts Malik Willis, you see Willis helicopter airplaning away from his pro day throw and Mike Tomlin looking around like a proud papa, get him. Does Mitchell Trubisky do that for Malik Willis?
Yes.
Does Dwayne Haskins do that? Does Mason Rudolph do that? Or do they look at it like we're fighting to keep our job? Like, not every veteran quarterback is like, I'm going to teach this guy. I'm going to take the
Carson Wentz did. I don't know if he did that with Jalen Hurts,
Yeah. I mean, other guys do it a different way. So I think that's also something these teams are going to have to sort of keep in mind. Like, if Seattle drafts Malik Willis, is Geno Smith going to be happy to be that mentor? Or maybe he will. Will Drew Lock? Probably not. Like, he's trying to think he could win that job. If Atlanta drafts a quarterback, does Marcus Mariota do that? Like, and so there's that aspect to it too. So, it's a great point about that year because there's so much teaching that can go on in there, whether it's a year or half a season, that can really pay off for these guys down the road.
Exactly. We're just gonna have to wait and see.
Well, we don't do patience well in sports media, Raichele.
We don't, but that's all we can do. Literally. But the draft is getting closer and closer. So
it is getting closer.
I'm like, whoa, time is ticking. Time is really going.
Yeah. I mean, we're just about a month out now.
Yep.
We are inside a month because the draft is the 28th. So
Oh,
buckle up, everybody.
Buckle up.
Then we get to sleep for May and June.
We do. Vacation time.
Hopefully it'll be warm by then.
Yeah.
As I still try to warm up my hands. My toes are still frozen.
And that is like sad. That's so sad.
I think that's more a me problem than anything else.
You need some fuzzy socks.
I do. I have them. It's just I put them away.
No, it's too soon.
I use mine all year. The socks and the fuzzy socks, they all got like packed away. It was like I was putting the shorts out. Like
no. I don't do it until like mid-April.
Yeah.
I get cold very quickly.
Rookie mistake by me.
Yeah. You gotta learn,
Yeah.
But that's going to be all for this week's episode of the QB Factory Reboot. Don't forget to rate. Don't forget to leave a review. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Do you have any last words, Mark?
As always, go Eagles.
Go Eagles.